The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, thinking they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
No, Terry McLaurin didn't say I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back like John Riggins did 44 years ago. He did say, though, he got what he wanted. Took a long time for him to get what he wanted. And according to reports, it's $44 million guaranteed. It puts him in the top 10 for receivers, not the top 5. And while he is 30 years old, he does say that he expects to play out the contract, which would mean he'd be 33 going on 34 at the end of it. Could he get another one here? Who knows? But for now, he's here. All is good. He expects to be ready for the opener a week from Sunday, and we're off and running for the 2025 NFL season with the last big problem shored up the other day when it was announced that Terry McLaurin had agreed to that extension. Terry McLaurin did hold the news conference yesterday after practice. Before practice, Dan Quinn was there with the general manager, Adam Peters, who finally got the deal done and expressed his gratitude to everybody involved, to the media yesterday.
It wasn't always easy, but we had a lot of talks along the way. He came to my office a bunch and really had a lot of cool conversations, and just want to thank him for his professionalism throughout the whole negotiation, and really pumped to be moving forward with him for a long time now. So with that, also wanted to thank the folks in our building, Brandon Sosna and Rob Rogers, who worked tirelessly on this deal, and they've been awesome really throughout their time here with me, and just can't say enough great things about them. They're really a great team and did a great job on this. And then thank our owner, Josh Harris, for his support and his money. And but no, honestly though, he's been so supportive throughout everything for whatever we've done, from this building and our team, and just anything we've needed, especially when it comes to our players. So it's fantastic to have an owner like that has our back and really shows support in so many different ways.
That's nothing new in terms of comments. We heard that about Dan Snyder, but we also heard that Dan Snyder would hop off his yacht and tell them who to take in the draft, like Dwayne Haskins, because he'd gone to high school with his son. So we got much more professional ownership now. Now, the deal was reported to be worth up to, and these are key words, up to $96 million. And during the course of these negotiations, what we were hearing was that Terry McLaurin was looking for something north of what DK Metcalf got, which was an average annual value of something like $33 million. I don't know what the exact number is, but here is the breakout of the up to $96 million, according to reports. The average annual salary is $29 million, so he didn't bump his head on 30 for whatever that's worth. But here's the real number, $44 million guaranteed. $44 million guaranteed. If it's a complete disaster, God forbid he has a career-ending injury, either working out for the Giants game or in the opener or during the course of the season, that's what he gets. He gets $44 million. It will pay him $87 million if he plays through the 2028 season, which would be the third year of the extension. In other words, he's going to play in the last year of his deal this year, $22.5 million, with the $30 million signing bonus. And then the contract would kick in for the 2026 season for 3 years. And if he plays through that, he gets $87 million. If he reaches the incentives, which are seemingly reachable, I mean, you're talking about 83 catches a year, he ought to be in that neighborhood, and the team makes the playoffs, and the hope is that they make the playoffs, then he would collect essentially another $9 million in incentives. So that's what would put it up to $96 million. Now, according to Sports Track, the base average of $29 million ranks 10th among receivers. 10th. Now, is he a top 10 guy? Yeah, I guess. I think it's arguable whether he's top 10, but his value to this team puts him in the top 10 range for sure. I mean, that he has earned that by being the mensch that he has been off the field and the productive player that he's been on the field through a lot of turmoil, especially at quarterback. And one of the things he said yesterday, we'll get to more of what McLaurin said, was this is the first year since he's been here, and he's going into his 7th year, that he's got the same starting quarterback in the 2nd year. In other words, he's been here 6 years, and the parade of quarterbacks has changed, including who started the season every year. So that's a refreshing thing, and getting back on track with Jaden Daniels is among his most important things. He says we're reps guys. We rely on a lot of reps, which they haven't had because McLaurin walked out of the optional team workouts. He did not participate in minicamp, and he did not take part in any single practice during training camp. Now, back to the money, the money involved in this, and this is Peters asked about the real value of the contract.
An important thing to know is and realize is we wanted to do this. We set out, we wanted to do an extension with Terry, and that we didn't have to. He's going in the last year of his contract. He is 30, but we wanted to do that because we believe in him, and we believe in that he can play into his 30s based on what he's shown us, how durable he's been, how hard he works, how well he takes care of his body. So we signed, it's a 3-year extension, so he's under contract for 4 years, and I don't think anybody up here or in that locker room would be surprised if he plays all 4 of those.
And you mentioned the support you got from Josh Harris in a negotiation of this magnitude. What is his level of involvement? How did that support show up?
Yeah, he's sorry, go ahead. Besides the money. Yeah, we talk a lot.
Pretty important part.
Yeah, that's the most important. But we talk a lot, and he's got a lot of experience of doing deals like these, not necessarily in the NFL, but in the NBA mostly, and so it's cool. We get to talk through it, and the contracts here are so much different than in the NBA. So he's learning a lot as we go and understanding how these things work. So we keep him in the loop step by step about our conversations we have with agents and players and what we're going to offer them and what we get offered back and all those things. So he's learning. He's always trying to learn about things. He's really smart, but he's always still trying to learn more. And so keeping him in the loop on all that. But we had his full support the whole time, which was really cool. Even though he wants to know what's going on, he's backed us the whole way, and he in the end he leaves every decision up to us, which is really cool.
You heard Peter say McLaurin is 30. He is 30, which is something that was repeated over and over and over during these last couple of months, and McLaurin was asked about the feelings on that yesterday.
There's analytics, there's stats, there's history that can point to try to give people an idea of this trend or what 30-year-old receivers, how they progress at that stage of their careers. And fortunately enough for me, I'm only going in my 7th season. Multiple guys are maybe in that situation. They're in years 9, 10, 11 maybe. And so the benefit I had coming out of college is I played a lot of high-level football, but I was only playing 20 to 30 reps a play all the way down to my senior season. So I've also been blessed to, never had a surgery or any major injury that's inhibited me to continue to play at a high level. So, and then, like I said, I take care of my body at a very elite level. As much as I put work in on the field, I do it equally off the field. And so, obviously the data is the data, but I think certain people, there's, outliers. There's people who may not necessarily fit in that set of data, and only time will tell. But I feel like where things are trending and my ability just last year, just in January, I ran a 60-yard screen for a touchdown, and my speed hasn't diminished at all. My toughness is there. If anything, my savviness of playing receiver has grown throughout the experience of just being in the NFL. So I see the game a lot differently than I was when I was 24, and so that allows me to be a step ahead mentally, and then physically I still play at a high level. So I have no concerns at all physically that I'll be able to continue to play at an extremely high level and continue to reach new heights. And it's just about taking it day by day, but the confidence is there. my mindset is there, and I have the support in this building to help me get to those goals.
So McLaurin's point is, yeah, it's a 10-year-old Mercedes, but it was kept in the garage. We changed the oil. It was well maintained, and it's got a long way to go. Maybe you can get another 200,000 miles out of this. That analogy. I don't know, but the fact that the matter is, he is healthy. He does keep himself in very good shape. He's really, really smart. And maybe all those things will tie together, and he can have the unusual wide receiver career where he's still productive as he approaches his mid-30s. As the contract stands right now, he is under contract through the age of 33. Do you give him another one after that? Worry about that when the time comes. Do you go to that last year? The way this contract works, they can get out of this without a lot of money. It's something like a $6 million cap hit, I think, even after the first year of the deal, maybe the second year. So he's here for sure for 2 more years. But after that, the team is not really on the hook if it doesn't work out. So the team is protected, and I guess to a degree he's protected as well, though I think if they get to year 3 of the extension, or 4 years from now, 4 seasons from now at the end of it, or actually 3 seasons from now, that I don't think that he plays out that 4th year under the terms. If they want to keep him, I think they restructure and extend for less money. If it does look like he's at the end of the line, they will just let him go. Now, sometimes you have these negotiations, and they can go 2 ways in terms of how the team feels about it. If the team looks at Terry McLaurin, who is the exemplary player on the team, does everything they want to do, and Dan Quinn's mantra of wants to do hard S with good people, he's that. He's a leader. He's everything you'd want in a football player. So the other players could look at this and go, man, they played hardball with Terry. What are they going to do to me? I mean, oh, my God, is this how they do business? On the other hand, you could have teammates going, well, Jesus, how much money does he want? And we're trying to build a team that can win a championship this year. And with no Terry in training camp, that's maybe going to hinder us. Maybe the timing that needs to be further developed with Jaden Daniels, so you could look at it both ways. In terms of how the players may be looking at management, we don't know. But this story that McLaurin tells maybe gives you some insight on how the players feel about him.
I'm on the field, and I get, it's announced. I didn't even know it was announced yet. And I go back into the weight room to lift, and I'm not kidding, 30 guys were in the weight room, giving me an ovation, cheering for me, happy for me, patting me on the back, just loving me up. And through all this entire process, that was the biggest gift that I probably got in playing football, because at the end of the day, statistics, sure, you want to have great stats. Sure, you want to, make a living for yourself and your family, and you want to win championships. And those are all important to me. But one of the most important things to me, not just now, but over the course of my football career, is what are people going to say about Terry McLaurin, the teammate? And for guys they're coming from the cafeteria, they're coming from the training room just to congratulate me and give me a hug and just say how happy they are for me. And that's what the brotherhood's about. And I'd like to hope that that's a reflection of the type of teammate they feel that I am, the person that they see every day who comes in here, works really hard, and not just on the field but off the field. And I care about them and their careers and their lives as well. I try to be as personable as I can with them. And just because I signed this contract, I'm still Terry McLaurin. I'm still the same guy. That doesn't change who I am. And so to have the respect from those guys in the locker room means everything to me. And they've been really supportive through this process. So the emotions were really high. Some days were good, some days were bad, but I try not to ride the good days as great days. I try not to ride the bad days as horrible days. It's life, and if you continue to stay focused and just be true to yourself, things tend to work out in the end.
Last thing from McLaurin here from this news conference he did yesterday, which was about 25 minutes. This was about the trade request, which came just about a month ago, right at the end of July. And what he says about it might surprise you.
The trade request was, something that I did, and, full transparency, I told the front office this as well, that wasn't something that I was doing for just a leverage point or just to do it, or let me cause some hoopla. Like, I try to be as intentional as possible. Am I perfect? No, I'm not. Are there some things that, you think about that you maybe want to handle different or do better? Sure, that's any situation. But the most important part is the communication that was very important throughout this process from start to finish. The way it ended was better than it started. So that's what it's all about. And there's a deal in place now that keeps me here that I'm extremely happy about. The front office and the coaching staff is extremely happy about. My teammates are happy about. This fan base is happy about. So that's a win-win when you look at a deal, to be honest. So everybody wins, in my opinion. And, I'm just really looking forward to continue to build my career here and hopefully leave a lasting legacy as a player, but as a teammate, as a person, and have a chance to win championships and just continue to pour into this community and this fan base, because I do love this place with all my heart, but there's also a business component, and I can never lose sight of that. But there was a lot of things that also allowed me to keep perspective, and like I said, my teammates were great with that, my wife, my family, my friends. So you got to try to keep perspective in some of these tough situations. And so yeah, there were some times where I was like, I don't know, you know what I mean? But I was never going to jump to one extreme to the other. It wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna be here or I'm gonna not. Like, I just really prayed every single day that the Lord ordained my steps and continue to speak to me, and I knew I would end up where I was supposed to be. So I'm definitely here, and I'm happy about it.
Well, one thing about the business part of this, and the business part is important when you're negotiating a contract, but I think for the long term, specifically Terry McLaurin, it may not be this way for everybody, but if he plays out his career here as a one-team guy, he has a chance to do some great things in this city, whether it's in business, whether it's in politics, whether he stays in the organization. So for now, you're fighting over several $1 million, which is important. But for the long term, it may be hundreds of millions of dollars, depending on what he does. And he's, talked to Magic Johnson at length about what Magic has done in business, and I think he'd like to do the same thing. So you look at some of the guys who are stars here for the Redskins back in the day, and they were able to set up businesses. Mark May did that. Joe Jacoby did that. Joe Theismann has remained connected here. He played in the Canadian League, but never played for another team. So I think that if you look at the long-term gain of staying in Washington rather than getting more money, forcing a trade, playing out your contract, becoming a free agent, all those things probably in the short run might have made him a little bit more money, but in the long run, I think he's made a really, really sound decision for himself and for the community, because I think he's somebody to look up to, and no matter what he does, I think he'll have an impact here for a long, long time, long after his football career ends. All right, coming up, more reaction to Terry McLaurin showing up, talking to the media about the negotiations and more. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. Maybe the most famous holdout since the John Riggins "I'm bored, I'm broken, I'm back" holdout of 1980 into 1981 concludes yesterday with the Terry McLaurin news conference saying he got what he wanted in the 3-year extension. $96 million, up to $96 million, $44 million guaranteed. And he says, I know I'm 30 years old, and I know everybody thinks that's too old to play wide receiver, but just watch me. I've missed a game in 5 years. I keep myself in shape. There's not a lot of wear and tear on the body because I didn't play that much at Ohio State. So let's see. But I think he's got a lot of money coming to him if he can reach all those goals, and I think the team is very well protected if Terry McLaurin falls off significantly as the years go by. I mean, they can pretty much get out of this after the first year of the deal, and he would get all of his money, he'd get $44 million, but the cap hit would be insignificant, relatively insignificant. And then if they do get to the third year of the extension, remember that's going to be 4 years, including this year. At 33, are they going to give him all that? We'll see. I mean, that's the NFL, and it's not the NBA. It's not Major League Baseball. These are not guaranteed contracts. And so when you hear up to $96 million, It is not a $96 million contract. And I wish him all the best because I think he's a terrific player and a terrific person. But it doesn't mean that he's going to get all of that money. He's, according to Sports Track, he is 10th among receivers in money at $29 million a year. Average annual salary. That's a big number there. But the biggest number is the guaranteed money, and the guaranteed money is $44 million. Just on these holdouts, just for historical purposes, we played that at the beginning of the show. I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back. And you know the story of John Riggins, who sat out the entire 1980 season. He did go to training camp and wanted to have his contract redone, and they didn't want to do it, so he walked out. And then they reached a deadline where they had to, either try and talk him back or keep a roster spot open, or they recognized he wasn't coming back, so they put him on, I don't know what they called it in those days, do not report list, or however they did it, but he sat out the entire 1980 season when they went from a team that had a chance to win the division, came down to the final game of the season in 79 when they lost to Dallas, to a 6-10 team in 1980. Jack Pardee was fired. Joe Gibbs famously visited John Riggins at his farm in Kansas. Riggins greeted him at the door at 10 o'clock in the morning with a beer in each hand and said to Gibbs, "Want one?" And Gibbs, of course, didn't drink. So Riggins drank both of them. And they both tell great stories about, how Gibbs talked him back into coming back, and Riggins leaning over the table maybe after the 2 beers and saying, "You need to get me back. I'll make you famous." And he did. He did. And the rest is history. But there's another holdout, which is also, I think, significant in the history of this team. And this goes back to 1983. Now, remember in 1982, when they had the strike and it knocked out half the season, they decided to have a tournament to get to the Super Bowl. So you had to win no matter how high you finished, and Washington had the best record in the league at 8-1. You had to win 3 games to get to the Super Bowl. All 3 were at home for Washington. They played Detroit, they played Minnesota, and most famously, they beat the Cowboys in the NFC Championship game. That was the only game that they had lost during the regular season to Dallas, and then went to the Super Bowl where Riggins did his thing against Miami with the 43-yard 4th-and-1 run. But in the I think it was either the opening game against Detroit, I think it was that game, where Jarris White had a pick 6. And Jarris White was a starting cornerback for the Redskins. Richie Pettibone, the defensive coordinator, loved Jarris White. And Jarris White in 1983 decided that he was going to ask for $1 million. Not $1 million a year. It was probably 3 or 4 years. And they didn't want to give it to him. And he held out and didn't report. And that opened the door for their first-round pick, Darrell Green. Darrell Green was the last player taken in the first round of the draft, just after Dan Marino went to Miami. The Redskins with the last pick because they had won the Super Bowl. And so the plan was, and in those days, even if you took a guy in the first round, didn't mean he was going to start his first year or two. And so with Jarris White out, they had to throw him in there. Darrell Green thrown in to play corner, and it worked out pretty well. He spent the next 20 years there and made the Hall of Fame. But Jarris White, that was his position. And Richie Pettibone has said over the years that if Jarris White hadn't held out, that Darrell Green would have become the greatest punt returner in NFL history, because that would have been the plan. Not that he was expendable as a first-round pick, not that he wasn't in their plans to become a starting corner, but as a rookie, they looked to play him behind Jarris White, maybe use him in some nickel situations, things like that. But because he then became so valuable as a starting corner, he played opposite Vernon Dean, who I think had been there the year before, that they couldn't afford to use him as a returner. So it's one of those what-if things. And we saw how Darrell was the secret weapon. Remember what he did in that playoff game against the Chicago Bears, where he jumped over Cap Boso and took it into the end zone and got the Redskins to the NFC Championship game against the Minnesota Vikings. Yeah, I mean, just think about that. With his speed, may have been the fastest guy ever to play. May have been the fastest guy in NFL history. And because he was so valuable as a corner, never got to return kicks. But that would have been amazing. Wouldn't that have been amazing to see him? As Mike Nelms was pretty damn good. So they were okay there. But it's just one of those things that you go, man, what if Jarris White hadn't held out? Okay, enough nostalgia there. Let's get to what Adam Peters and Dan Quinn said yesterday regarding the contract extension for Terry McLaurin and the way it dragged on through the entire training camp when it finally got done this week. And the question was put to Peters, and Quinn was on board with this as well. Were you concerned that this situation might stretch into the regular season?
At least for me, I think about this could get done tomorrow, or this could not get done and linger into the season. But I think throughout the conversations that we had with Terry's agent, Buddy Baker, and then the conversations that I had with Terry, as we got closer and closer, there's a lot more optimism, at least within myself. And it's just, you don't want to get too optimistic or pessimistic, but as we got closer, it started feeling pretty good.
I guess, Dan, for you, how important is it to get him back on the field now? Is this enough time to get him ready where you need him to be for the opener?
Yeah, absolutely it is, and it's awesome. I love coaching him. He is a rare competitor, so he'll be out on the field today with his teammates, along with Noah Brown and some others that are on the way back. So that's an important time, John, even though it's not technically game week, just to get some reps together. It's a big deal for us, and, yeah, we're really pumped about it.
Adam, obviously this is one of the bigger deals as the GM of this organization. What did you go through? You know these guys emotionally. What did you go through having to try to get this guy on this squad, keep him here, and not lose Terry McLaurin?
Yeah, I think it was a long time, obviously, from when we started the talks till when we got finished. But I think there's you get optimistic, pessimistic, all those different things throughout the process. But what we never lost was our love and respect and really admiration for Terry and what he does for us on and off the field. So keeping those things in perspective and trusting that we'll be able to get to do something.
When you get into those negotiations and those conversations, how do you balance how much you respect a guy like Terry and what he's done on the field versus the need to keep the financial house in order and kind of how you run the business side?
Yeah, I mean, it's a balance, right? Where you got to do what's best for the team, but also reward somebody for being a great player. And so, you set some parameters for what you think that is. But our team did an incredible job of trying to figure out what the right number was. And I think as long as you come and you're respectful throughout the process and you understand you're probably going to give in a little bit more, really both sides giving in a little bit more than you want, coming to a place where it's maybe slightly uncomfortable both sides, and you really just never lose respect or lose perspective of what this person means to our locker room, to our team, and to this community.
So it's Dan Quinn and mostly Adam Peters there on the extension and the fears that it might slip into the season. You heard Peters talk about the respect on both sides. I think one of the more amazing things about this holdout was, and you don't really even call it a holdout because he has a contract, and eventually became something you call a hold-in, where he's in camp but not practicing, was, and I was really impressed by this, not that there's nothing not to be impressed about with Jaden Daniels, but Daniels never broke ranks here. You knew that he wanted Terry McLaurin in there. He always appeared confident that the deal was going to get done. He never criticized the front office for letting this drag through. But while all this was going on, as McLaurin said yesterday, Jaden was totally in his corner.
That's my guy. That's my dog, man. And him and I have had a lot of personal conversations throughout this process, and he was an extreme support for me since the first day. All this was kind of unraveling, and to be able to have conversations with your quarterback, but somebody I consider my friend and my teammate. It really helped me. You know, he never let me forget that, you know, my presence is missed out there. He never let me forget that, you know, that I'm worth everything that I'm asking for. He never let me forget that he's got my back and he can't wait to get back out there with me. Was instrumental, because I'm a person that pours into a lot of people, and I've learned over my life sometimes you can't pour from an empty cup, because you just give and give and give, and you know, unfortunately some people don't necessarily give in return. And that's not to say that like I give to get, but like everybody wants to feel reciprocation in any relationship you're in. And so to have that reciprocation that I felt from him since day one, but to see how we've grown off the field personally and on the field speaks for itself. And you're just looking forward to really getting back out there with him and helping him as much as I can. And so there's some things I know he's been working on in the offseason. There were some things I was working on in the offseason. And I like what I see on film, and our communication is amazing. So it's just about getting the reps now. You know, I mean, him and I are very rep-oriented and rep-driven. And so we're going to get as many as we can in over these next however many days until week 1. But to have a guy that has my back like that, you can't put into words. And so I really do appreciate him. He knows that, and there's nothing I wouldn't do for him either.
So now there is peace in the Valley. Terry McLaurin's got his contract. Everybody's getting ready to play the Giants in the opener. Full practice yesterday, practice today. I don't know what the weekend plans are, but they get back on track for a full schedule. I guess practice resuming next week. The roster, as Dan Quinn said, going into cutdown day, is going to be fluid for a while. They only kept 5 receivers. They're likely to add another one. The practice squad, guys coming in, guys going out. There's a lot that's still happening. The team is, though, signing running back Donovan Edwards, who played at Michigan, signed as an undrafted free agent with the Jets and was released this week. So there are some additions being made to the practice squad, but you know, that's always the case. Teams can claim players off your practice squad and vice versa. But by and large, the roster is set, and this was Quinn's overall outlook on that when discussing it yesterday.
We love where we landed, but there were some really tough calls and hard, and that's what you want it to be, where it's competitive and, you know, where you can't sleep, and we're talking at night and talking in the morning. And so, like, as hard as that is, that's a great thing, because then it's not so cut and dry easy. And so, like I said, it doesn't mean there were some really tough calls.
Yeah.
I love that we've added some players like Von Miller. You don't just sign one. He's a multiplier by the way he connects to others in the room and standards, and that's no different than Wagner and Ertz and some others. But there's a lot of things, you know, that we love about this team, like to have this many guys want to come back and be a part of the practice squad after Adam and I sitting in front of them on a tough day. That speaks to their regard for one another and knowing that they want to be a part of it. And so I thought what the players have built here together is pretty damn special. And so that doesn't happen that often, Scott. And so to see that many people want to come back and be a part of it, and like not even any hesitation, man, you know there's a real connection. And so when a team's connected, you got a chance to do some good things. So that's probably what I'm most excited to see. And you wouldn't know that until you have those hard conversations and see how the next day goes. And so I thought together these players have really created something special.
I have no doubt about what Quinn says, but I would think that if you've been with the team throughout training camp, you know the system, you know what you're supposed to do when you get on the field. It's probably a more comfortable situation than looking to land on somebody else's practice squad. The players do have the option, like when they're cut, they're brought in and said, would you like to sign on our practice squad? And they may say, well, no, I think I may have another chance somewhere else, and they can do that. So, you know, part of it is, I mean, they are building something here. This team does have an opportunity to go to a Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl. That's all part of the picture. Also, I would say this about the practice squad. You know, again, this is not to take away from anything that Quinn said there, but they've got the oldest roster in the league. This is the oldest roster. And what happens when you have an old roster? Well, sometimes you have injuries. They were pretty healthy last year with an older roster. And I got into it with some dope last night on Twitter about the roster. And you can't blame Ron Rivera for the fact that this is an old roster. Like, it's all on Dan Quinn for signing all these old players. Okay, recognize this. If your roster stinks, and the roster did stink when Adam Peters took it over, he had to get rid of a lot of players who were not the quality that they were looking for here. To take their place, he needed to find players from around the league who were available, guys who had played in the league. Well, good young players are under contract. They stay with those teams. It's the older players who you roll the dice on, and boy, it worked out last year with what they did with Zach Ertz and Bobby Wagner and others, and that's how your roster gets old. It gets old because the young guys who they drafted stink. Jamin Davis just got cut by the Jets. I don't know if anybody picked him up. Former first-round pick. Chase Young has become a pretty good defensive end for the New Orleans Saints. He's not the quality of the second pick of the draft. So, let's recognize what they did, and they did it out of necessity. It's not like Dan Quinn goes, I'm just going to sign old players. Oh, look at that roster. It's an old roster. That's not good. That's just the way it works. That's, it was necessity because of how bad Ron Rivera's drafts were. And you go back to, January 3rd of 2020 when Dan Snyder wished everybody a happy Thanksgiving and said that Ron Rivera would be the coach-centric coach of this team. That never works. Never works. It worked for Bill Belichick when he had Tom Brady. But, just like Bill Parcells said, if they want you to cook the meal, they ought to let you shop for the groceries. Well, when he was shopping for the groceries, he didn't win a Super Bowl. When George Young was shopping for the groceries in New York, he won 2 Super Bowls. And I think that this situation here has an opportunity to produce Super Bowls. A good GM in Adam Peters, a good coach in Dan Quinn, and let's see what they do in the next few years. But I'd say so far so good. All those old players that Dan Quinn brought in, they only made an historic jump from 4 wins to the NFC Championship game. I think that's pretty good. I'm not an expert on football, but that seems pretty good to me. All right, coming up, Washington Post with an exclusive on Jim Irsay, who had a drug relapse late in life, passed away in May, but at least for me, will be somewhat of a hero in the ouster of Dan Snyder. We'll get to that more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
If you're over the age of, say, 50 and from Baltimore, the name Irsay may make you throw up in your mouth. Bob Irsay, a villain, an alcoholic who stole the Colts out of Baltimore, lied in front of the governor that he was not going to move the team, and very famously in 1984 took all the equipment out of the team facility at Owings Mills in Mayflower moving vans, and the photos of the vans rolling through the road and the snow falling with the Baltimore Colts sign in the front is a chilling photo from that time. And it took over a decade for Baltimore to get a team back. I believe in 1996, they finally got what was the Cleveland Browns, and they became the Baltimore Ravens. And they have won 2 Super Bowls since moving, but I think the logo was meaningful. The NFL really screwed up on this. They got it right when the Browns moved to Baltimore, that the logo and the name stayed, so that when they got an expansion team in Cleveland in 1999, they just adopted the logo and the name and the helmet and all that. But there's a void there in Baltimore, and especially when you see the Indianapolis Colts upside down horseshoe on the helmet, that tugs at the heart of people who remember Johnny Unitas and the glory days of the Baltimore Colts. But it is what it is, and each town has a team now. And if you're in Baltimore and you're let's say under the age of 40, well, that's the only team really you've known is the Baltimore Ravens, and people are very loyal to the purple there. But Jim Irsay inherited the Baltimore they weren't the Baltimore Colts, they were the Indianapolis Colts by the time he inherited them in 1997 when his father passed away. And Jim Irsay has had struggles with addiction himself and has talked openly about it. And it appeared in the late stages of his life that he had kicked his habit and that he had done good things. And he was a very generous man, very much liked not hated like his father, understood what his father did and was apologetic for it. People from Baltimore, in a perfect world, he would have become the owner of the Baltimore Colts, and they would have stayed. Maybe Indianapolis would have gotten an expansion team, but that's not the way it worked out. Anyway, it appeared that he had overcome his demons, and when he passed away in May at the age of 65, some of that was attributed to the way he'd abused drugs during his life. Well, there is now an exclusive in the Washington Post, which dropped today, from Will Hobson, Albert Samaha, and Sam Fortier, who used to cover the Commanders. And I'll just read you the first few paragraphs of it. There's some other details to fill in. But the lead is, in the final years of his life, Jim Irsay, the owner and chief executive of the NFL's Indianapolis Colts, spoke proudly about how he confronted his lifelong substance abuse battle with honesty and transparency, even launching a charity to promote openness around mental illness and addiction. He called it Kicking the Stigma. But behind the scenes, Irsay, who died in May at 65, spent the last 2 years of his life in the throes of a relapse that he and the Colts executives repeatedly hid from the public, a Washington Post investigation found. This relapse and his death came under the care of a, quote, luxury recovery doctor prescribing opioids and eventually ketamine at amounts that worried people close to him. This doctor signed Irsay's death certificate, stating the cause was cardiac arrest, and no autopsy or toxicology testing was performed. Ketamine is the drug that killed Matthew Perry, if you remember all of that. And apparently the addiction was fueled by a doctor named Harry Haratunian, who was known as an addiction specialist, someone who was supposed to help people who had gone through addiction, like Jim Irsay. Irsay later, not later, but it was like a couple years ago, in the last year of, what was the show on HBO? But Andrea Kramer had done an interview with him, Real Sports, the Brian Gumbel show. She had done an interview with him for Real Sports, and he said that he had been to rehab 15 times. Now, according to the reporting of the Post, Irsay overdosed three times in the last 5 years of his life. And so, we're finding out things that we don't necessarily want to find out about, but it is very good reporting by the Post. And there's indication that other owners around the league may have known about this, and it all got covered up. So Jim Irsay, while he was exemplary in a lot of ways, apparently was never able to fully kick his addiction to drugs, and apparently died of a drug overdose, and there was no autopsy or no toxicology report. I will say this about him, and I, as a fan of the Burgundy and Gold, will remain indebted to what he did for the rest of his life. Now, this may have happened without him, but I think he moved the process along. And remember, in 2021, when the Beth Wilkinson investigation into the toxic culture of the team found that Snyder should be forced to sell, and that was according to what she recommended. That never came out because there was no written report on this. They didn't want anything to leak out, so it was only an oral report given by Beth Wilkinson, who is a lawyer who investigated all of this. But Irsay, who has three daughters and they inherit the team, was disgusted by this, and he was the only owner. The only one of what would have been, I guess, 30 others, because although Mark Murphy served essentially as the team president for the Green Bay Packers, who, as you know, have no owner. They're a publicly owned team. But the other, 29, whatever, minus Snyder, of course, wouldn't say anything. And in October of 2022, at the owners' meeting, he went on record to say that there was merit to exploring whether Dan Snyder should go. And then he talked to Jay Glazer of Fox Sports, and he says, I do not feel it's in the best interest of the Shield and the NFL. This is not how we should be represented. It's regrettable that we have to be in this position. He said he had no concern about the consequences from his partners or from Snyder, who reportedly had dirt on the owners and the commissioner and was planning to use that against them. He says, I'm going to talk about it. I will not be muzzled. I will stand by it. And good for him. He had the courage to do that. And, nobody's perfect. Everybody has issues in their life. And sadly, he had issues which may have taken his life at the age of 65. But he had the chutzpah and he had the gumption and he had the courage to stand up and say, we cannot have this guy in the league. And the wheels started to turn. And then on October of 2022, I think a lot of it, maybe not as most of it, but a good percentage of it was also due to this great reporting by Don Van Natta and Seth Wickersham in a piece that came out in October of 2022, which led to finally Dan Snyder saying, okay, we're going to put the team up for sale. And I know some of it may have also had to do with it in Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Tanya Snyder, who had become the co-owner of the team when it looked like Snyder might be forced out, and he sort of was. He was supposed to not be showing up, but everybody saw him at the facility, and he was like hiding out in his box during the game. But anyway, Tanya Snyder sort of became the face of ownership, and when she went out on the field as a breast cancer survivor in Breast Cancer Month, she was booed. And what has been reported is that she and her children, who pretty much stayed out of the limelight there, they said to Dad, time to sell. And he finally sold the team and paid a $60 million fine out the door, but walked away with $6 billion on an $800 million investment from 1999. All right, so that's my take on Jim Irsay. Very sad, the reporting about what went on today, the exclusive in the Post about how his life ended, but I also look at him as being somewhat heroic in helping to push the dastardly Snyder out the door. Greg Olson making the rounds. He showed up on the Rich Eisen show yesterday. I think he is the best analyst that Fox has. He's not the top paid. He's not the number one analyst, with Tom Brady making $37.5 million a year, but he is excellent at what he does. And when he was on with Eisen, we're at that point in the season, about to launch, Super Bowl favorites. And Olson's position is, until I see somebody better than the Philadelphia Eagles, that's my team.
I covered a bunch of their games last year. Yep. I said in week 13, 14, whenever I called one of their games at that point, that I thought they were the best team in the league. It turned out to be true. I still think until someone shows me a better roster, top to bottom, than Philadelphia, I still think they're the team to beat, especially in the NFC. Mm-hmm. I know that's not necessarily a huge shocker pick. I just really, when you look top to bottom of the group that they have, they're young, they're experienced, they have great coaches on both sides of the ball. I think Howie Roseman is as good, if not the best front office guy in the league, with their ability to build volume picks, add a lot of young talent. They don't hit on everything, but they take so many swings. They don't have to bat 1,000. They add just the right veterans, just the right moves. I just think they have a really good understanding and a pulse of why they've been so good over the last couple of years. And I think there's some really interesting contenders there. I don't know if in the NFC there's someone off the top of my head that I say, okay, they start out in front of Philadelphia. And then in the AFC, I think the Chargers are close. I don't think they're there yet. Okay. I think Kansas City, it's still the three-headed race. Kansas City, Buffalo, and Baltimore. Cincinnati's got to figure out their defense, I think, a little bit, and figure out how they're going to, support Burrow a little bit on the other side of the ball. So I think it's the usual suspects. And I know that's boring, and I know that's not real hot take, but I don't know how you pass those rosters and those quarterbacks out of complete nowhere. But the NFL is real. There's injuries, there's surprise. You never know how things play out. But right now, with all rosters intact, I'm just going to stick with the people that have proven year in and year out to be, at the end, they're there.
Yeah, I mean, in the NFC in particular, Greg, if this was smash cut to 1 year ago at this time, we're not going, watch out for Minnesota and Sam Darnold. And this kid, Jaden Daniels, is special. So special they're going to the NFC Championship game. Nobody was saying that. You know what I mean? Like, nobody was saying that. It just does appear that the AFC is what you say. There's the Bills, there's the Ravens, there's the Chiefs. And then there's that fourth seat that does appear to be occupied in the musical chairs by Houston last couple of years. And we'll just see, who winds up in the AFC Championship game. Like, that is the way that you kind of handicap it right now.
Yeah, and then I think teams that are coming there, right? Teams that are on the rise. You got Denver, you got the Chargers. Yep. If Cincinnati, not necessarily on the rise because everyone's familiar with Burrow and they've been to a Super Bowl, but that defense has obviously got to be figured out. Al Golden now taking over as the coordinator, and Hendrickson is holding out, so that it's their best player. So some questions there offensively. Cincinnati will always be good. So there is that next crop. Obviously, Houston and what they've done with CJ now going into year 3. Can they be more like his rookie year and less like last year? So every team has these questions, but it does seem like year in and year out that the conference has run through the same 2 or 3 teams for a couple years, and it's not by accident.
No, they're good organizations and they're bad organizations. And Kansas City is an excellent organization. And on top of that, and the most important thing, which they finally have here, a quarterback. If you have a quarterback, you're in the mix. Cincinnati was a backwater forever. And the fact that they have Joe Burrow puts them in the conversation every year. Right? That's the most important position in sports is the quarterback. There is no question about that. I guess at one time you might have been able to make the case that a great center was what you needed in basketball, but the game has changed. Starting pitching in baseball, not as important as it used to be because nobody pitches more than 6 innings. But quarterback, there is absolutely no question about how important that is. And if you have one, you could be in the mix. If you don't, you're still searching. And so that's why. And I guess Philadelphia might be sort of asterisk on this, but Jalen Hurts does something, that most quarterbacks can't do with that tush push, so that helps him. And he's also a great competitor and is a winner. And I have admired him so much since he was benched at halftime of the national championship game in his sophomore year, where he had started every game for Alabama. Tua Tagovailoa came in, replaced him, won the game, and that would have been the point where you go, okay, that's it, changing of the guard. Time for Jalen Hurts to leave. Didn't. Stayed for another year as a backup at Alabama. Think about what that takes. Here he was facing his teammates for 2 years as the leader, and now he's been replaced and he's got to be a backup. Does his thing, doesn't complain, is needed in the SEC championship game to keep them alive for the national championship, wins that game when Tua gets hurt, stays the rest of the year, transfers to Oklahoma, Heisman Trophy contender, and goes into the NFL as a second-round pick, and the rest is history. So, Philadelphia as a team to pick is interesting. But these preseason picks, even with people of knowledge like Olsen, they're not that meaningful. And nobody pays attention to them until the end of the season when that team wins. If he picked them, you say, oh, yeah, I had him from the beginning. If it's a different team that wins, you don't hear boo. No, nobody says anything. And it's same with sports radio hosts, making preseason picks. Who cares? And nobody's going to write them down, and nobody's going to hold you to them. And the only reason that anybody will ever know about them at the end of the season is if you happen to pick the right team. And you go, I had that from the beginning. I think I had that. Anyway, that'll do it for me. Bram is coming up next, and I will see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.